Good morning. We're s- we're starting off with me today because Stephen didn't feel like he could do this, so we're just starting off with his partner, his other dimensional friend, and Stephen's gone inside. So his body, that which I am speaking through, is terrified, and so it's going to represent that state to those people in the world that he feels like he's come here to help. And we feel like he's come here to help them as well. But what so you're just looking at a face, you know. I think this is oftentimes referred to as a talking head. And it took me a while to set up this viewing area, and I basically put the topping heads, talking head, non-talking heads, just topping heads. It's just they took the top off. It's the mask. Yeah, so it's interesting. Here is the black and the white. Here is the yin and the yang, the male and the female, and here is a body in crisis. So it's not a battle between me, get that, between that which I represent, which is beings not in bodies, and I am currently, but I represent beings not in bodies. If you're a being, as you are, in a body, then you are an embodied being. And you are in a world. And you are experiencing this world from inside what you think of as yourself. Just take a moment of pause, because I just want to allow Stephen to appreciate how uncomfortable he is and how he's discovering why he's so uncomfortable. Because he's holding himself apart. And it was interesting this morning because he came out of the dream world and I was in that dream world with him. So I came out of the dream world and I was around his consciousness. I was present and really doing what he does very well, which is hold space for people to let go. So I am holding space while Stephen lets go. You might ask, what's Stephen letting go of? And I would say primarily right now, he's letting go of fear. And we'll just let him do this for a little bit. And it's interesting because this can be a mask. This can mask what's really going on. And one can unmask and not put on a pretty face. One can let what's really going on go on and be seen. So there's this dance that's happening right now where there's this mind that's trying to figure this out. And as is oftentimes true of the mind can't figure it out. And if the mind can't figure it out, there's sometimes a feeling of desperation, like the world's going to end unless the mind can figure it out. So here we go into what we might call the deep dive. So many things were happening at once. Earlier there's this fight or flight, which the legs were moving like they were running. Tap, 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 move, 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 move. And then there was just this feeling, I can't. Stephen just had the thought, I could have had a V8. We've talked in a couple of these videos about Stephen's perception that in order to heal, he needs to suffer. But that thought form or matrix is a belief held by many, some of which originated by images of a being who came to represent the higher realm and then was crucified and was hung on a cross. Somebody, as the story goes, when someone stuck a sword in his side, put vinegar in it. And this is how one is treated when one describes themselves or others describe him as the Son of God. And then there's another matrix. The matrix or thought form of God. And anything that has existence has been created. So this matrix or thought form of God is a creation. And many people, this is coming out, so just notice it's coming out. Many people worship the thought form of God that's been created. Panic. So this is the release of panic, because there's a bit of panic, and we took Stephen through this process. 12, 13 years ago, where we suggested to Stephen that he disconnect from the thought form of a God. You know, one being responsible for everything. And people have an image of that. They have an image of this male figure who I guess 6 days, as the story is, created 7, but there's a day of rest. So pretty much created all reality in a week. And then there's just the mind that argues against that. There's the science mind that says it's not humanly possible. And then there's the mind that says, well, it wasn't a human, it was God created everything. And there's another thought in the field of thought forms, that some thought is that God, the one who wears the big hat, knows the past, the present, and the future. And created this world exactly how it is. Created a world in which the God figure could, this is a thought form, could send his only divinely begotten Son. So this is the thought form, that it said that this being, this thought form, God, sent his only begotten Son to earth to gain forgiveness for the sinners. That's a lot of thoughts. And if one was so fortunate to grow up in that field of thought, one might have somewhat of a distrust of this world. This is what's working out right now. Distrust of this world created by this thought form. Because really, when you think of it, God is created by humans. If God was created by God, that thought form of God could have done a better job and not been so confusing. But the confusion is that the thought form was created by human beings, to make them feel more comfortable in their masks, in their appearance, that they are good whatevers. We won't even go into naming names, but there are a lot of these organizations that have belief structures based on a God that the different organizations agree on. And people are supposed to make sense of all this. And all of that tends to lead to a lot of suffering, which Stephen is experiencing less of at this moment. But out of the dream world, Stephen was experiencing a lot of suffering. And probably the suffering of the world, which Stephen may perceive that he has come to alleviate the suffering of the world. Although, can you alleviate the suffering of the world if you don't stop suffering? Because how much alleviation are you finding happening if you spend the majority of your time suffering? You know, the questions are difficult questions. They're not difficult to ask. They're actually quite easy to ask. I'm asking them. I'm not struggling with the questions. And I'm not struggling with Stephen's discomfort. I'm just aware of it. If I identified with Stephen's suffering, then I'd be being Stephen. And I'm much happier being Arlen and not suffering. As the suffering arises out of a construct. Reality is a construct. Reality is made up and then experienced. And then people say, well, that's reality. That's just the way it is. And one could say, well, that's the way you're experiencing it. And then the person might say, no, that's the way it is. The other person might say, no, that's the way you're experiencing it. That's the way it is. That's the way I experience it. Back and forth and back and forth. And this constructed creator, talking about the constructed creator, the creator that was constructed to help people suffer the separation from oneness. And in the story, the couple, man and woman, were just having a good life. It's just there was food available and temperatures were possibly good and wasn't a whole lot that needed to be done. But it seemed to them, metaphorically, that God had it better than them. And again, in the story, Stephen swirls around in his head, because he's in the head. That's where the sufferings can take place. I mean, you feel it in the body, but the sense of separation is in the head. I'm separate. I'm separate from everything. Yeah, feel that. I'm separate from everything. I'm over here and everything is over there. I'm here, basically, a mask hanging on a wall, walking around. And it can feel very sad. The sadness can be so deep that one feels gut-wrenching, like Stephen feels. But the good thing about gut-wrenching is that you are in your gut. You are feeling. You may be also in your head thinking about feeling and whether or not you want to be feeling, and could you get out of feeling by just going back up into your head and staying there and describing it all with your mind. They're the problem, they're the problem, they're the problem. But what's the solution? If they're the problem, are you the solution? Are you the one that feels like you can solve it all if you just run around fast enough? If you just do more? If you just tax your body just a little bit more, that might be the solution to all your problems? It's just when your body becomes completely dysfunctional. Where you've exhausted your last resources. And the body's demonstrating this for you. Body's demonstrating hitting rock bottom, dulling everything out. And feeling like there's no place left to go. The suffering of almost complete separation. And then you start to see the reality behind the reality behind the reality. We almost did this video with mirrors behind us. We could say it's all done with mirrors. But now you might have come into that state where you're seeing things differently. You haven't completely lost the ability to bring it all into another level of focus, but you're willing to just be in this particular space of separation. And once you're in this place of what feels like complete separation from everything, You have an awareness that there is an everything, or an all, or a oneness that you long for, and it's right there in front of you. In some ways, it's right there inside of you. And you feel it inside you, and you feel a resonance, a feeling that what you want is inside. The feeling of home. You know it because you are it. Just words. I am that I am. I am all that is. I am the oneness experiencing separation. And I am in a body, and Stephen is in a body. Currently we're sharing the same body. And Stephen is finding his sense of humor. His awareness that the reality he's experiencing is his projection of reality into his experience. And he's like, okay. So I was suffering. He's processing it. And you're getting, you're getting to watch him process his suffering. And you can process your suffering. If you are suffering, if you are holding yourself in a place of separation, that place of separation is the experience of suffering. And the deeper one goes into that experience, the more sense of separation one feels, the more suffering one feels, the more separate one feels, the more suffering one feels. The more separate one feels, the more suffering one feels. Separation, suffering, separation, suffering, separation, suffering. How long can you maintain this mask of separation? There's only one time that you can give it up. That time is now. Which backwards is one. You could do it for the team. There's that word. The team. Is there an I in team? would you like to just have an experience of just hanging the mask on the wall? Are you ready to come back to yourself? Are you ready to join the field of creation? Are you ready to be a player? Not pretender, a player. Actually engaged in this process that's going on and letting go of your resistance to it. Stephen is feeling good about the question that he's being asked. Are you willing to give up the feeling of separation, the addiction to suffering, the unwillingness to allow joy to rise, and the unwillingness to greet others as yourself? There's a whole world out there which exists in here. There's a whole world out there that exists in here. There's this world, and then even deeper is this world. And this world and this world and this world are all connected when you're in this world. There you go. Stephen's getting it. Stephen's accepting it. You know, could mean that he's gonna have a halfway decent day. But he's definitely let go of the suffering for now. Whether he continues to make that choice of letting go of suffering is up to him. We'll encourage him to do it, but we can't make him. That's why we're guides and not prison guards. On some level, though, if you're living in a prison, we can represent your image of a prison guard, just letting you out into the yard to play like kindergarten. We, the cosmic we, have great hope and desire for your success in this adventure we're all in. Because we want you back, not to control you, but to show you what's possible in terms of creation when you're a participant in creation and not feel like creation is being done to you by some divine thought form that minds have created that makes it things like it might be someone you might not trust the Divine Father that sends his Son to be killed for the sins of others. This may not make sense to you, and it doesn't have to, because it's a thought form. And thought forms are not experience. Thought forms experience, but thought forms, they can be experienced as your experience because you have that thought form. If you are willing to let go of that thought form and that thought form and that thought form that you're constructing your experience out of, just let go to your experience, then you start to feel it. Stephen's feeling it. He's like, yeah, I want this. And we might say to him, stop wanting it, you're having it. Because sometimes you could stay separate from what you're having and not feel like you're actually having an experience, but you're having an experience you want to happen, you want to have happen, but you can't experience it because you got it in the future. But what if you took it from the future and just powed yourself with it and brought it into now? What if you lived in this now, fully and completely engaged with all life in this now? What might that be like? And one way that may be like makes Stephen very tearful and makes him go into his head a little bit, thinking about a wasted time. How much time was wasted being in this? It wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't a waste at all. It was an experience of separation that was useful to experience, to know separation, and to maybe choose participation. No longer separate. No longer holding oneself apart from love. From the expression of love, for being able to say, I love you. We love you. Loving yourself. Loving others as yourself. Loving. Not wishing you could love loving, but loving. Whole body feels it. Where are these energies going? Who? And then deeper. Who? Nature has an alignment. It has a force, a field, it's creative. It's emerging just like this. Has to do with a willingness to participate, not in thought forms, in life. To participate in life. To feel the joy of life. To feel the sadness of life. To feel the anger of life. To feel the fear of life. To feel the wholeness of life. The life that is completing you as you complete it. So we're in a time of completion. This has been carefully orchestrated within the oneness, within the all that is, within the creative aspect of everything. This is orchestrated to be. You might just want to say, I am all that I am. Stephen's feeling the simplicity of that. He's also thinking about cartoons that he watched as a child. I am what I am. Another one, Sam, I am. I am, I am. T-I-A-M. I am. I am a one in team. Is there an I in team? T-I-A-M. There is an I in team. And now if you choose, you can be an I in team. You can be I am that I am. Now, why put it off? We welcome you with open arms into everything. This is everything. This is love, heart, hope, compassion, generosity, understanding, one. One world. You are in it now. You are in the one world. I ground myself to the healing center of the earth. I open myself to the healing power of the one. I connect to my deep self. I connect to my higher self. I connect to my highest self. I am one with all things. I do not separate myself. I do not force myself to suffer through separation. Once you've mastered that suffering, you can let it go. You took the class, you passed the test. Now you can be the teacher. Love. It's the answer. No matter what the question is.